1992 to 1995. The 90s.
The 90s, the preparatory and tentative 90s, early 90s, all manner of things going on in the world and in our world. You know, at the beginning of the year, we're without a major record contract, and our response is to roll the sleeves up and get on with creating our own record label. Can we do it in Scotland? Can the studios be Scottish? Can the artwork be Scottish? Can the musicians be Scottish? Why not? So and that also catches the spirit of the age as well. Scotland, a lot of rising self-confidence in Scotland. So yeah, we go for it. We call it Fidelity Records. Fidelity in both senses of the word, meaning that we are expressing a bit of loyalty to Scotland or loyalty to each other, and fidelity in terms of purity of sound. That logo was created by Central Designs, well-known Scottish design company of the time. And everything about Fidelity Records and the new album was based in a kind of local confidence. I mean, the title of the album comes from the Czech dissident who became the president of Czechoslovakia after the fall of the Berlin Wall. Václav Havel, a great phrase, truth and love will always win over lies and hate. And I was actually rector of Glasgow University at that time. I was halfway through my rectorship between 1990 and 1993. It was a gas to be in Glasgow at that time. The place was absolutely buzzing. So it just felt natural. But I remember you sitting with a glowing computer screen, piecing it together. I mean, it was absolutely, talk about relying on our own talents. You know, you were actually constructing everything out of technology at the time, which was as good as it was at the time. But I think you got an incredible effect, and I think many of the songs are still strong. We should return to quite a few of them. A song called Profoundly Yours, which I think was the first single out of the bat. Beautiful video by Mae Miles Thomas and Bernard Rudden, our video makers from the heyday. It was a strong record. It was a strong statement record.
So we launch Truth and Love, a gig at the Edinburgh Playhouse. I'm amazed we can still play the Playhouse. Massive that place.
Big
and then we go on a UK tour, which includes the Town and Country in London as well. So people still wanted to come and see Hue and Cry. And then just at the end of that tour, Truth and Love charts in the top 40 at 33. That was our 1, 2, 3, 4th top 40 album.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the fact that Truth and Love had charted had alerted people at Virgin EMI headquarters, because they got a remix done of Labour Love.
Yeah.
They compiled a best-of album, and they had contacted us to say, would you be happy to be involved in the promo? We said, yeah, sure, we're proud of our work.
Yeah.
They released Labour Love, and it went in the charts again.
It went in the charts again, and it was an absolute out-and-out club dance version. We did Top of the Pops again, so it's kind of quite confusing, because you're sort of in this kind of indie, we are creating our own music mode, fiercely independent, and suddenly you're back in the heart of the machine again. But I mean, I must say, it was the oddest looking band I think we've ever had out with us, with a Mohican guitarist, a totally goth bassist, and you and I jumping about wondering what we were doing. I mean, I sang my knickers off because I was really enjoying the clubbiness of it.
That's good.
But I looked around and I thought, who is this? Who is this strange collection of grotesques around the
What they were was, I'd been asked to be the musical director of a music show in Scotland called Talking Loud. And this was my band, and they were actually a bunch of fantastic musicians.
They were indeed. I'm not saying they weren't great musicians,
but their dress sense was a bit odd. But even to this day,
and their Barnett sense was a bit odd as
even
well.
To this day, they're still odd.
Yeah,
I loved their oddness. Anyway, it did really well. The best of album went into the top 30.
Yeah.
And so did the Labour Love remix. And we had a little shot in the arm. But I think it was because, Truth and Love had done well as their first independent album, and then they thought, well, we should maybe capitalise on this, and they got something out of it, and so did we. few London record companies came sniffing around to see what we wanted to do and what ambitions we had. Because our manager Alan was still with us, and he said, these guys at Permanent Records, I quite like the vibe. And the Fall were on Permanent Records.
Yes, I know, it was great.
And John Martin. So it was Marquis Smith and John Martin that convinced us to sign to Permanent Records, because we thought that was quite funny.
Yeah.
But our whole career up to this point, people have been annoying us with, you should write with this person, you should write with that person. And you and I, we kind of go,
No, not interested.
But because the guys at Parent Records said, right, we're going to put some money into this, we thought, do you know what? If they ask, let's give it a go. So they asked, would you co-write some songs with people? I said, well, okay, fine. So they put us in touch with a guy called Richard Niles, who was an American arranger, and he could tap into the London jazz scene because he had his big bands. And
that's right.
He did famously Swing It Sister, Breakout.
And he also did the whole chart for Slave to the Rhythm, Grace Jones.
He did the strings on the very first version of I Refuse.
Didn't know that.
Do. That's Richard.
Okay.
So I guess, we had a history with him. So we sat down to write some songs with Richard Niles. It didn't go well for me.
No, I don't think you were happy in the process, but it was a very, it was quite tense at times.
Just say you love me. Be your words.
When you and I write songs, we kind of steer each other subtly, but we're both our hands are on the tiller, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But when you bring a third person in, I didn't know when to interject. I just didn't know when. I was clumsy, and it wasn't just because I'd never done it before. And when I felt the song that we were writing was going in a direction that I thought, no, I was a bit bullish and saying, no, it's not going that way. And I found my function in that songwriting situation was to veer to the left and darken, and that's not always my function when you and I write songs.
No, well, obviously not. Sometimes you say, don't bore us, get to the chorus. Yeah.
So I found myself pulling it away from the kind of pop side of it that you and Richard were pursuing. Just Say You Love Me was one of those songs that we wrote. But there's a lot of them that didn't make the record that I reach for now.
Yeah.
Just give it those empty words.
When I think about Showtime and the cover of it, which is us, being classic Sinatra types or 50s swaggering tuxedo nightclub types backstage, I think it was an attempt to go back to the kind of feel of Remote, but with slightly more poppy songwriting. I mean, I was still singing about bloody technology and Marxism and alienation and all the rest of it.
And those were just the love songs?
Those were just the love songs. But that was our sort of first introduction to the London jazz scene, and I think we got an awful lot of respect. I remember quite a few musicians in the room at the time, in the studio at the time, saying, thank God we're making a proper album. Thank God we're actually making something that involves strings and horns and proper lyrics and proper songs. So I think it ended up as a conduit to different people as a record.
That's on a strip of film.
So we get to the end of 1993 and a call comes through asking us to open up for one of our lifetime heroes. I mean, we've already done Madonna and U2, and now we've been asked to open for James Brown at the Aberdeen SEC. Freezing cold.
October in Aberdeen, James Brown. What were they thinking?
The band had flown over from Atlanta that day, so they were exhausted. We were sound checking, and the James Brown band looked up, gave us very big smiles, and started to do the Boogaloo. So that was a bit of an affirmation, because obviously completely nervous about doing it. And then backstage, after we came off from doing our opening act, someone said, would you like to meet James? And we said, yes. And they said, well, only one thing you have to remember is that you don't call him James, you call him Mr. Brown. So we took that advice, we came up to him. You were wearing one of your Versace famous shirts. I was wearing a pair of glasses which should have remained in the 80s.
But unfortunately, this was in the days before you could shoot video with your phone. So the thing I remember is after he came off stage, James Brown and his band arms around each other, and they prayed for funk. And I remember listening to them ask God to make them funky. I mean, I don't think we ever tried.
No, maybe that was the secret trick that we missed, Greg. Is we didn't pray for enough funk.
If you don't pray for funk, you'll never be funky.
Sweet motherfucker, do I strangle me with the love?
To support the release of Showtime, the album, we start playing clubs, like jazz clubs.
Yeah.
Camden Jazz Cafe, Whelan's in Dublin, the Lemon Tree in Aberdeen. We had a great band.
Yeah.
Sandro Ciancio on drums, Eddie McFarlane on bass, Kevin Mackenzie on guitar, and sometimes Nigel would be there. Nigel Hitchcock would play saxophone, and it's so funky. Goodness me.
Yeah.
And it was as though going back to the clubs after our kind of years in theatres and big gigs, and where you're slightly compromised, you've got to play to the kind of lowest common denominator
Very true.
a wee bit.
Very true.
But when you go back into these jazz clubs, one, you're expected to be a good musician and show some virtuosity because they're jazz clubs.
Yeah.
But it kind of encouraged us to play funk and jazz. Like, it was the beginnings of us to begin to think, wow, we can play funk and jazz again.
And the response of the audiences to that was a big part of it as well, because the joy in people's face as we were absolutely laying it down, and sometimes in quite a grumpy manner. I think I'm also spectacularly grumpy at times.
But the band cheers you up.
But the
You can
band
hear it.
cheers me up because they're so good.
This was about the time we started doing piano vocal gigs, because we played the Castlemilk Folk Festival. Castlemilk's a suburb in the outskirts of Glasgow, and that's where we met our long-suffering front-of-house engineer, Robert Higgins. He booked us to do the Castlemilk Folk Festival in the mid-90s. Ralph says they still talk about it. I hope we were nice.
I hope we were all right. Maybe we weren't.
Now the place she had her heart.
We signed a 2-album deal with Permanent Records, so we had to make another album. You had said that we'd started to do piano vocal gigs in these smaller clubs.
Yeah.
So it kind of got our piano vocal duo chops together. So we made piano and voice.
Some beautiful songs on that. We also did things like Till You Come Back to Me, a cover of that, which opens the album. I mean, there's a song about called Mary, which is about our mum, which was an absolute classic. When we started to do these piano vocal gigs, there was a sort of sense, because we had been out as this big, brash, loud, full complement band, that there was a real specialness about us just literally casting pearls upon the darkness. It's always been the core of what we do. I'm quite proud that we were clever enough to reinforce that with a record. And people had always got that from the Bittersweet, but piano and voice was just a kind of, I was imagining it as a way to show what we could do, and at this kind of sensitive piano vocal acoustic level. It's a beautiful record.
Find a life for yourself. Don't live under hometown blues.
So we're at the end of 1995. It's been 3 years of trying to find our feet in a new reality.
We just can't stop doing this.
No, it's a relentless work and creative ethic. Relentless.
But the thing I'm most pleased about is we're still together. I mean, I can't remember, honestly, hand in heart, I can't remember a point in me going, should we just stop this?
Bags in hands and his hands on you.
Records charting,
Played with our heroes.
made beautiful recordings, went out and performed with the best possible musicians that we could find. And there we are at the end of 1995, wondering what's next.
What she gained, she stands to lose. Mary, Mary, you had to choose.